Hello, welcome to another episode of Islam4europeans. I'm your host, Robert, and I wanted to gear this video towards non-Muslims. I'm actually starting a whole series of videos in which I'm gearing my message, basically why I started the channel, to a non-Muslim audience. Because up until now, most of the my followers on my channel have been Muslims, and I think it's important for them because we're trying to change the game in terms of how we run as a Muslim community, how we do outreach to non-Muslims, the relationship between Islam and the West. But I think this is an audience that I wanted to reach out to more because that's the whole goal of Islam for Europeans is making it presenting Islam as like an alternative way of life. For those who don't even want to convert or aren't even interested in it, the relationship between Westerners and Muslims, and the conflicts that arise, and what's the best way forward to help help with those problems. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of why I started this channel, basically. So, I converted to Islam in 2003 from a small town in southwestern Ontario. And, when I converted, the Muslim community was very friendly. Most of the time, you'll find that when people do convert to Islam, the Muslim community gives them a whole bunch of hugs and is very happy to see them there. And for me, my family personally, they had no problem with my conversion to Islam. Thank God, I was one of the lucky ones. And on top of that, I was kind of a social butterfly. Even with my non-Muslim friends, when I converted, they didn't really have that much of an issue. So, the transition process was pretty easy for me. I didn't, you know, do a lot of vices that aren't allowed in Islam. So, that whole process as well was very easy. It was a smooth transition for me, and I kind of just fit right in. But what I noticed is that over the years, that people were converting to Islam, and they just didn't see them anymore. And I always thought, why? At the back of my head was like something is just it's not right. I just can't put my finger on it because when you think of like people who convert to a different sect of Christianity, for example, you know um, usually they just kind of fit right in. They just blend in with everybody else. It's not that difficult of a transition process. Even if they convert from atheism to Christianity, or maybe atheism to, a sect like Jehovah's Witnesses or something like that, like I'm sure that there are difficulties associated with that, but I think, there's a lot underneath the surface that kind of prevented, the acclamation of converts in the Muslim community. And there's several reasons for why that is. Just to say also, I have a master's degree in applied social psychology. So this channel, I apply a lot of what I learned in applied social psychology to these specific issues. So there's the one angle to look at it is that Islam is a different religion than Christianity. It's not really known that well in the West. I mean, some people have cursory knowledge of Islam, but a lot of Westerners still don't know, have no idea what Islam is. You can check out my introduction to Islam video that I made a couple of weeks ago. But to them, it can seem very foreign. Um, the way that we pray, the way that we fast, the fact that the Quran is read in Arabic, the way that some Muslims dress. Um, it's a lot of barriers to your average Westerner. It's quite a lifestyle change. Like you can read the Quran and say, okay, yes, I believe that this is true. I believe that Islam is the right religion. But that's a huge jump, especially if you're a Westerner, especially a white Westerner, that to go and change religions and convert to Islam, right? So there's that angle. It's a different type of practice. There's the vice angle. Like you have a previous lifestyle where you're dating or drinking alcohol, doing drugs, gambling, whatever. These things are not allowed in Islam. So a lot of people they think it's the truth, but at the same time they don't want to convert because like there's a lot of vices involved that they would have to basically give up, right? The praying 5 times a day, that's a lifestyle change as well, so there's that angle. But again, I think one of the major angles is basically the social angle and the cultural angle, because the Muslim communities in the West, they come from different cultural backgrounds. And like I said, Muslim community is very friendly overall. They're very happy to see converts. But what you'll notice is that a lot of them just kind of stick to their own cultural enclaves. They don't really venture out into kind of like Anglosphere, non-Muslim, white non-Muslim spaces. They normally don't go to the hockey game. They don't go to the rock concert. They don't go to the art in the park. So, and if they do, they just there's not much. There's just cursory interaction with people. You're not really establishing relationships. I mean, even during the protests for the school agenda that happened last year, I saw Muslims there. I saw many Christians there, just non-Muslim white Westerners. And even though they were rallying for the same thing, it wasn't like they were talking with one another. They kind of just stuck to their own groups anyway, right? So there's very little interaction there, right? So it creates barriers. Like you as a Westerner now, you change religions, and you're very happy in your religion. I wouldn't give Islam up for the world. I've been Muslim for 20 years. I made a lot of great friendships along the way. Um, but still, I mean, there's a lot of you know uh, huge questions that the Muslim community hasn't even really thought of trying to answer. One is that one, and I already mentioned, is the acclimation of new converts, right? And also just basically the relationship between Muslims living in the West. Like because even in recent years, especially in Europe proper, there's a large backlash against Muslim immigration, to Europe. And you have to realize that there's a segment of the political right in Europe, where it's just the main focus is on Islam itself. They just hate it, Islam for Islam's sake. It doesn't matter how many people immigrate, no matter what country they come from. If they convert out of Islam, then they're okay in their book, and accept like a liberal lifestyle, right? And then there's another segment, you know, their main concern is just, changing demographics. The fact that their culture is dying out, that their people are becoming more and more marginalized and disliked by the establishment. And you see this in Canada as well. There's like a huge backlash among rural Canadian communities, antigen Canadian communities, who are not just protesting Islam or Muslims per se, but the fact that like the rent prices are skyrocketing, housing prices are skyrocketing, and they feel like they're a people that have been completely left behind, that their politicians don't want to listen to them. And unfortunately, what happens is that there's a uh, kind of like this segment of the right that focuses on like this anti-Islam agenda. So they kind of capture that kind of feeling and steer it in a direction where it's towards Islam itself is the problem. Even though, like, if you look at people coming into Canada recently, 4 of the 5 top countries are not even Muslim majority countries. China, India, the Philippines. Um, so the Muslims in the West, they're in a kind of really kind of interesting spot, because there are some many positive things that they've done. They've been leading the charge against like certain agendas, educational agendas that many non-Muslim white Westerners are against as well. And many people find that commendable. Uh, but at the same time, there's just kind of this feeling, like what else are they adding? Like they want to, you have Muslims who want to present their religion and present it as an alternative lifestyle. But, the fact of the matter is the vast majority of institutions, Muslim institutions, are run by born Muslims and not by converts, right? Converts are just simply not organized in any way. So they don't really, I guess, interact or, have their finger on the pulse of what Canadians, nth-gen Canadians really feel about many topics, like war, the environment, and unfortunately, what happens is that when you don't interact with the general public, when you get all of your information from social media and legacy media and the politicians, it kind of skews your reality of what Westerners think about such and such, right? And vice versa too. There are many non-Muslim Westerners, especially in Canada, that don't really know as a whole what Muslim communities think about them, what Muslim communities think about various social issues. Um, so like it's there's a lot that remains to be seen with that. And I always said the tragic thing about the relationship between Muslims and Westerners is that there is none. There's no dialogue going on. There's no attempt for outreach, and like whatever conversations do happen is between like Muslims and some like establishment approved kind of like anti-Islam Westerner, like a Jordan Peterson, right? Or like some conservative politician. You're right. So those types of conversations are simply few and far between, right? So those are basically the reasons why I started to this channel up, because I felt that you have the Muslim community who's very nice, very warm, welcoming. There's a lot of misconceptions about Islam. There's a lot of misconceptions about the Muslim community itself, and like I wanted to dispel a lot of those myths and misconceptions, because like I feel like they've been given a bad rap, basically. And likewise, a lot of non-Muslim Westerners, white Westerners, especially in Canada, they don't really interact with Muslims either. If they come from like a rural area, you don't really know them that well. And there's this whole idea that Islam is only a religion for foreigners. It's only for a religion for people who come from Muslim countries, the Arab world, Pakistan, Somalia, right? It's there's kind of this impression that yeah, you can convert, but it's almost like it's a cultural change as well, right? So that's another reason that I created the channel. Also, just basic education. Like what is Islam? What is it about? There's many controversial topics in Islam that the anti-Islam right will use. That there's far more nuance when you actually study Islam in depth. Either a particular ruling doesn't apply because we're living in a non-Muslim country, and that was a ruling that they had back then because it didn't really suit the Muslim community's needs. You have things about Islam that Muslims do from some Muslim societies, which is completely unacceptable in our religion. You have things that the Muslims do that is borderline acceptable or not acceptable, but it's not something that any new group of Muslims have to adopt. So that's another thing, dispelling myths and misconceptions about Islam as well. And just examining, why there's just no interaction whatsoever. I mean, personally, like when I go to like Muslim events, right, even the lingo is very different. Like, even when they speak in English, many of the terms they use are in Arabic, right? So for us, we understand what those terms mean, but for your average non-Muslim Westerner, it's like a whole new language, it's a whole new set of jargon that you're simply not used to. So and that that's going to create some barriers. I mean, I remember one time I was at like what's called Muslim Fest in Mississauga, and they were having like this kind of youth poetry thing, and this white guy just stopped at like the side, like listened to poetry, and he was like riding his bike, and he said like he's listened to this poetry from this 16-year-old Muslim sister, and then he's like, I'm hearing a lot of anger, right? So I tried to explain to him like look, like I don't think it's something personally against Westerners. It's just like some of these kids like their parents come from like war-torn countries. So it was kind of difficult to explain that, like it's nothing about Islam itself. It's just it has nothing to do with the doctrine of Islam, but more so opinions and attitudes that Muslims and Westerners have toward each other, right? And those are the difficult conversations that we're trying to have, because I met a lot of Muslims who don't feel that way, that they're not angry at the general Western public. It's more about just our governments, And I think, a lot of non-Muslim Westerners would agree as well. It's the governments, it's the establishment, it's the media that has, given Muslims a bad rap, and it's given, Westerners a bad rap as well. Um, so I think that, at some point, if you were to put these people in a room together, they may come to some sort of an agreement on certain things. But, I feel that it's the responsibility of us, people, Westerners who converted to Islam, to be able to, kind of bridge that gap as much as humanly possible. It's a huge responsibility. It's a responsibility that a lot of converts have not taken on. I feel that many converts, they kind of shy away from this, that, they kind of just want to assimilate into an existing Muslim community. And we have no one to blame but ourselves. I mean, we really, have not tried to close this gap, and I think that's because, um, because the relationship between the Muslim leadership and like the people that they interact with, like the people who don't like Islam, they draw to the Muslim leadership like flies, and they end up sparring with one another, and it just creates this kind of really toxic environment. And even when it comes to outreach that the Muslim community does, like open houses, dawah booths. Dawah is like spreading the message of Islam. Like unless you're someone who's already interested in Islam, you're not going to go to an open house at a mosque, right? Very, very rarely. Like a booth, one of those like come learn about Islam booths. Unless you're already interested in Islam or you're a hater, you're not, like those are the only two types of people, types of non-Muslims who are going to go to those booths, right? So the people who are in the middle, the people who, they don't really have an opinion on things, they feel like they don't want to give their opinion because they don't want to say any false information. These are the people that we're trying to reach out to. Maybe they're interested in Islam, maybe they're not, or maybe they're just more interested in the relationship between Muslims and Westerners. But that's kind of the direction that I wanted to take this channel. I just never got around to doing it, just because there's so many important topics to talk about as a Muslim convert, that Islamic leadership, the people who run mosques, they kind of just not going in the right direction. Right. So please let me know in the chat. I'm going to try to send out this video to as many non-Muslim Westerners as possible. And finally, the last point I wanted to give that I forgot to talk about is that, this idea of keeping your culture within Islam. Because what we're advocating for is that the people who convert to Islam, even, no matter what your cultural background is, may come from a European background, a Latino background, First Nations background, those people who convert should collectivize and gel into a wolf pack. Because Muslims, by and large, they're not going to enter into conversation with your non-Muslim family members. And that's a huge part about being a convert, is mitigating the relationship with your non-Muslim family and friends. And they're not going to see that Islam is a religion for everyone, that encompasses all cultures and keeps the good thing in every culture, unless they kind of gel together as like this sub community, right? So yeah, if you're a Muslim who's watching this, try to send this video out to like your non-Muslim friends, family members. Let's get the conversation going. Let's take Islam for Europeans in a different direction, and let's do outreach. So whether your opinions about Islam are negative or positive, I want to hear feedback from non-Muslim people who watch this video. But yeah, let's do that. Okay, that's my time for the day. I'm your host, Robert, Islam for Europeans. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.